Shavua Tov, welcome to everybody. Are we recording? Yes, we are. Excellent. Good. Welcome to our first Siyum. I tried to find, looking back at the recordings, when we started Sefer Shoftim. And I think working backwards, it must have been around about October of last year. The reason I say that is the first recording that I could find on my hard drive was chapter 4, which was in December of last year. I have got an external hard drive with all the previous ones, but I can't seem to get it to connect at the moment. So I'm guessing that we started it in around about October of last year. It's taken us a year to do Sefer Shoftim. Normally, when people do a section of learning, usually a Masechet of the Talmud or a whole Seder of Mishnayot, they will do a Siyum and make a Hadran. And we'll talk about that in a little while, what the Hadran is. And the idea of it is that it's a celebration. It's a celebration of having completed something. And it's an encouragement to remember what you've learned and to move on in the learning to something else and to build on what we've already done. Now, it's not usual to make a Siyum after finishing a Sefer of Tanakh. There's two reasons for that. One is because in the mainstream yeshivot, they don't even learn Tanakh, and we've had that discussion before about the failure to have a broad education in the yeshiva system. So we won't go down that route just now. But the second reason is that it's usually done very quickly. People will whiz through a Sefer of Tanakh, in a couple of hours. It's taken us over a year. And the reason that it's taken us over a year is because we've done it very thoroughly and very analytically. And that's just the style that I happen to like. We have lost a few people on the way. And I guess that's partly because the dynamics have changed somewhat and not everybody likes the way we do it on Zoom, but we're unfortunately not able to sit round the table in shul and see people knitting and all those kind of things, which was so nice and sort of informal. It's different, but times are different. We have no choice. We have to do it on Zoom, and it does have its advantages that we can have people joining us from Ra'anana and Tel Aviv who wouldn't have done otherwise, and the people in London can still join in even when they are not here in person. So, overall, I think the positives outweigh the negatives, but I do miss the close proximity, if you like, of what we used to have, and please God, we'll get it back one day. Somehow or other, we'll have to manage to combine the positives of both sides. I don't know how we'll do that, but we'll think about it when the time comes. So I think that having finished Sefer Shoftim and having done it in such detail and having spent over a year doing it, I think that it warrants a Siyum. What I'd like to do to mark this occasion is to give us a sort of an overview of the book of Shoftim, then there are three people who, well, two and a half really, two volunteers and one with his arm up his back. So I've got three volunteers to tell us a little bit about what they feel that they've gained. I hope they've gained something from learning Shoftim. And then when we've done that, we will actually do the Hadran. And I'll explain to you what the Hadran is when we get to that bit. So I will start by talking about an overview of Sefer Shoftim. the book of Judges covers a period of 355 years, from the death of Joshua to the birth of Samuel. It's interesting when you look at it sort of from afar with the sort of zoomed out, that sentence that I just said actually in some ways encapsulates the whole book, because it begins with the death of Joshua and it ends with the birth of Samuel, two very powerful characters, two people who managed to unite the nation. The nation was united under Joshua after the death of Moshe. And then when Joshua died, that unification fell away, as we saw in the book of Judges. And this period of the book of Judges is replaced by the book of Samuel, by the life of Shmuel, who was the person who unified the people by being the Navi, by being the prophet through whom God spoke to the whole people, and through whom the kings Shaul and David were anointed. And of course, that's the time when the people came together, unified under the unified king of Israel. So if you think about the book of Judges, you think about the period of Judges, those 355 years between the death of Joshua and the birth of Shmuel, that was the period of rudderless, leaderless nation. And that was the problem that we had. And of course, we see throughout the book, the theme over again is that there was no king in Israel and everybody did whatever they wanted. This is the theme of the book. So the book begins with the death of Joshua, or begins after the death of Joshua. But when you're reading the books of Tanakh, it's very important to see them in context. So before you can really consider the book of Judges, you have to look at the last chapter of the book of Joshua. And before you can look at the book of Shmuel, you have to look at the last chapter in the book of Judges. So if you look in the last chapter of Yehoshua, which I will just share my screen with you now, over here. So here's the book of Joshua. This is the last chapter of the book of Yehoshua, and we can see here in verse 19 onwards. And Leon, are you with us?
I am, yes.
Do you have the last chapter of Joshua?
I do.
Excellent. Verse 19, please.
But Joshua said to the people, "You will not be able to serve Hashem, for he is a holy God. He is a jealous God. He will not forgive your rebellious sins or your transgressions. If you forsake Hashem and serve gods of the foreigner, he will turn and act harshly toward you and destroy you after having done good with you."
Keep going.
No.
Keep going, yeah.
The people said to Joshua, "No, we will serve only Hashem." Joshua said to the people, "You bear witness upon yourselves that you have chosen Hashem to serve him." And they said, "We are witnesses."
Okay, let's stop there. Now, that is the end of book of Joshua. That is where the Shoftim begins. So it begins with the people being told by Yehoshua, being warned by Yehoshua again, if you stray from serving God and you start serving other foreign gods, then it will not go well for you. They were warned. And they even said in verse 22 that Leon just read out, "You are witnesses against yourselves." And they said, "Yes, we are witnesses." Vayomru edim, we are witnesses, meaning we accept that. Now, on that background, we then started to read the book of Shoftim. And what we saw, of course, is Judges. Judges, yeah, the book, what did I say?
Joshua.
Sorry. Judges.
Sorry,
Yes.
I didn't know I wasn't muted. Sorry.
Thank you for correcting me. We then started reading the book of Judges, Shoftim, and we see that that cycle that happened was that they served God, and that was good. And then they did exactly the things they said they wouldn't do in the last chapter of Joshua. They went off and served the foreign gods. And then what happened was they got trouble, and then they cried out to God, and then they got a savior in the form of one of the judges. And then everything was okay for 20 years or 40 years. And then it all started again. And that was the cycle. And we saw that over and over again. And we saw the various different judges and their different styles. One of the things that we saw, which I think was an important message, was this descent of the state of the judges. Each one seems to get less not less powerful, but less sort of spiritual, if you like, until we ended up in the quagmire of idol worship and rape and murder and civil war at the end of this period. So we saw those cycles, and we saw that whole thing. And then if you look at the very last words of our book, which we're going to actually learn formally in a few minutes as we finish the book, we see those famous words again. And remember, bear in mind that this is leading us into the next book in the same way as the end of Joshua led us into Shoftim. Here we're led into Shmuel by this verse: in those days there was no king in Israel, every man did what was right in his eyes. And on that background of despair, really, because we've had 2 chapters of despair, the last 2 stories in Shoftim. By the way, I'm sure you all noticed that the last 2 stories in Sefer Shoftim, there is no shofet, there is no judge. It's got to the stage that not only have we not got a king, we've not even got a judge. And the stories of Pesel Micha, the idol of Micha, and the rape of the concubine took place where there was no judge at all, is mentioned. So the descent is complete, and it takes us right down to the depths of where we were. And then, as we'll learn when we start Shmuel, we start to rise up with the birth of Shmuel, and then we reach our glory. We reach our glory days in the second book of Shmuel, when we have this time of King David and King Solomon, and that, I think, is the overview for me of Sefer Shoftim. If you were to ask me personally what was my highlight of the whole Sefer Shoftim, it would be the 9 weeks that we spent on the story of Shimshon. And the reason that was such a highlight for me was because it completely turned my view upside down of Shimshon. I always thought of Shimshon as a great hero. I always said that I was sorry that I'd never called one of my kids by the name of Shimshon, because he represented to me Shimshon HaGibor, Shimshon the strong, the one that was taking no nonsense from the Plishtim, the one that went out and single-handedly saved the Jewish people. That's how I viewed Shimshon before we spent 9 weeks learning about him. And by the time I'd finished learning it with you all and preparing it, of course, you learn more than anything, I'd completely changed my view about Shimshon, and I felt that he was a very flawed character with very little actually to recommend him. So for me, that was a highlight, because it caused me to completely change the views that I had previously. And really, for me, that is what learning Torah is about. It's about educating yourself, and it's about being open to new views and open to interpretations. And that's why I want to hear from you, and that's why I am particularly keen that the shiurim that we have are interactive. I know that some people don't like that, and some people prefer just to have the shiur. But for me, it's important because I learn as much as you do from the interactions. I learn myself, and that's something that I think we can all learn from everybody's interactions. So for me, that was the highlight of Shoftim, was the story of Shimshon. I'm now going to ask our three volunteers to give their ideas on what they have gained from learning Shoftim, and to share with us their views. And I'm going to start with Howard Eckstein, because he was the first to volunteer, and he was a real volunteer, by the way. He didn't have to have his arm twisted up his back or anything. So we're going to start with Howard. Howard, tell us what you have gained from Shoftim.
Yes, Johnny, on the subject of wanting to name a child after somebody, you're a young man.
Can you take the screen off, Johnny? Can you take the screen off? Can you take the text off the screen, Johnny, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, there we go. Right.
Well, I may go on too long, but it's part of my narcissism in having volunteered. I'm most fortunate that coronavirus came along, firstly to reintroduce me to the world of the shiur, which I left some 15 years ago when I came to Israel. Secondly, to enable me to meet those of you, that's most of you, whom I've never met before. And the third, to share with you the amazing blessing that is our Rebbe, the remarkable Rabbi Dr. Johnny Lieberman, whose patience, wit, fairness, good humor, and seemingly inexhaustible knowledge propels us forward week after week. I joined you as the story of Shimshon opened. He was strong and was a judge for 20 years, but as Johnny said, far from perfect, and defeated by the wiles of a woman. This well-known legend, however, was for me not as important as the reappearance of a constant theme in our history. We are forever losing faith in our leaders and challenging them, as when 3,000 of the men of Judah went to Shimshon and said, "How dare you challenge the Philistines?" They bound him and delivered him to the enemy. Let us hope that we've learnt not to repeat that painful lesson. We see this Sefer's recurrent theme. In those days, there was no king in Israel, and every man did what was right in his own eyes. And this not long after Shimshon was rendered eyeless in Gaza. Repeatedly we read, there was no king in Israel, and again in the time of Micha, when we encounter yet another graven image, we learn that the lesson of the golden calf had not then been learnt. There is in abundance conflict and violence, even the gang rape of a Pelegesh unto death, her corpse cut into 15 pieces distributed around the land. This is just the beginning of the deadly descent, for it is taken as a pretext for civil war. What should we learn from this? That violence towards women is never far from man's hand, that men will go to war over an issue of principle. As in a civil war, there is no depth in the battlefield, so no quarter is given, but also that when the violence is over, there can be the redemption of reconciliation. So we who can learn the easy way by reading this lesson should anticipate that redemption and resumption of relations will follow, and thus we should seek to arrive at that destination without the fighting in the interim. And what are the final words of the Sefer? In those days, there was no king in Israel, and every man did what was right in his own eyes. A warning, surely, to avoid anarchy and stick with what we have. For what we have here today is something that does not appear in the whole Tanakh, democracy. It is demos, the people who take the place of the king in a democracy. We are very fortunate that in this country, according to Pew Research last February, a country in which most of the population are immigrants or the children of immigrants, arrived since the birth of the state, from countries that were overwhelmingly not democratic, the Soviet Union and Arab lands, 55% of Israelis are satisfied with democracy, and only 43% are not. Israel is accordingly the inverse of the norm, which may tell us that the underlying lesson of Sefer Shoftim, that anarchy will reign when there is no king or monarch in the form of a democratic government, has indeed been realized. And the last thing I want to say is, if it took us 9 weeks over Shimshon, it proves to me something else about the uniqueness of and the disproportional achievements of the Jewish people. It's not just the bar mitzvah that makes a boy and hopefully his sisters learn to read and write by the age and perform by the age of 13. It's also the polemics, the argumentation that we have time after time after time over a sentence, over a word. This is what marks out the Jewish people from all others. So, Johnny, thank you very much, and colleagues and peers, thank you very much. Very, very enjoyable. Chazak, chazak,
Thank you, Howard. Thank you very much for those kind words and deep words as well. I'm not going to open it up to everybody to discuss each one individually, but when we've finished, we will stay on for those that want to discuss it afterwards. Sharon has asked if she can say a few words now because she has to run off to a shiur, another shiur. So I'm going to open up to Sharon for a minute or two now before she has to run off. Sharon, you're on.
First of all, Howard, that was absolutely beautiful, and every word was true. Thank you. I'm glad you found your voice in order to be able to share your thoughts with us. Second, Larry and I just wanted to thank you all for the pleasure of studying a book which we have not addressed ever in our studies in such a methodical way. It seems that when we looked at the artwork and the operas that have been written about the characters in this book, that all the world knew about this book's details much more than Larry and I did, and I think many of us who have been limited to the Parsha and Haftarah and some Talmud, that this was a real treat. Revisiting the story of Shimshon, if you recall, I read a couple of books, including one by Jabotinsky about Shimshon. And it's interesting for us to have an awareness from that book how some of these characters in the book have inspired the Zionist fathers who created this country, whether or not they needed to bend this story a bit to their own needs or not. I think it was a fascinating opportunity to look at the modern incarnation of the Shimshon story, and also to take heed from turning things into propaganda too carelessly. So thank you everyone for studying with us, and Mazel Tov on the end of this book, and may you all be strengthened by it and go on to study in strength.
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you. Eloquent as always. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, I'm going to turn now to Helen because, and I'm delighted that Helen volunteered at the second request. And the reason I'm delighted that Helen has volunteered is because Helen has been with us from the beginning and beyond. Right from the beginning, when we started doing shiurim in English, I don't know how many years ago now, it must be 5-6 years ago, when we were doing the Sedra before we started doing Tanakh. We did the Sedra every week. And Helen was there right from the start and has always been the voice of reason, for me anyway, been the voice of reason, and that feminine voice that has often been missing from Jewish learning. Helen and I don't always agree about our politics, although I think we've come a lot closer in our views over the last few years, to be honest. I'm not sure whether I've become more of a lefty or she's become more of a righty, but either way, I always enjoy what Helen has to say, and so I was very pleased when Helen agreed to share her thoughts with us. Come on, Helen, tell us all about how you feel about Sefer Shoftim.
Thank you so much. I'm really touched by what you said, and it occurred to me, who would have thought a year ago when we started this, sitting round the table in the shul that we would finish long distance by Zoom. I mean, it's just incomprehensible. So I come from a place that I have never studied Tanakh in any depth before. So this has been a new experience for me. And I really didn't know much about the characters, if anything, in Shoftim. And it's been fascinating to learn about them, looking with fresh eyes, as Johnny loves to say. So what have I taken away from these Sunday mornings? There's 3 points. The first thing is to understand how the characters' lives reflect and contrast with our lives today. There's so much to take on board, both what we should do and what we shouldn't do. And if you don't think about that aspect of it when you're reading through these stories, then it's pointless. It's a pointless exercise. You have to take something to make it relevant to the way we live today. That's the first. The second thing is to realise that these people that we're learning about and reading about were human, with all their merits and their faults, and to acknowledge that. And the last thing is that the way they lived and their relationship with God has to some extent been enshrined in our religious practices. And I think it's a measure of how far we've travelled and how much more secure we feel in our Judaism that we're able to challenge some of these practices, making them so much more relevant to the way we live today. And for me, making it relevant to my life today, the way I live and the way I want to live, is the most important thing of doing any of this studying. So my thanks to you, Johnny, for taking me on this journey, and to everybody else who has contributed. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. I could not have written anything that I agree with more than that. That is really quite staggering, because the 3 things that Helen has pointed out there, making it relevant to today, challenging accepted ideas which need to be challenged, and looking at things with contemporary eyes here is exactly the whole point of this thing behind me here that you can see, my banner behind me. That is why I set up this organization of Tchelet together with Ravi Doe and with Ellie. The whole point, we sat for a long time before we came up with the name and the strap line. The name Tchelet was my idea, because for me, the Tchelet took us back to the originals, the original idea of what the Torah was talking about. And the strap line of inspiring Judaism is exactly what Helen was talking about just now. The idea that we should be inspired by what we're learning to actually do something different, to actually think something different, and actually to gain from the characters' positives and their negatives. And those things that Helen has said make me very happy indeed, because if I could have chosen what I wanted my co-learners to take away, those would be exactly what I wanted them to take away. So Helen has made me very happy this morning. Thank you very much, Helen. Right, now, Stephen Schaffer, another late entrant into the Shiur, and an even later entrant into the volunteering. He's the one that had his arm halfway up his back when he had the misfortune to bump into me yesterday when we were out for a walk, and I managed to persuade him to share with us his thoughts. So Stephen, share with us your thoughts, please.
Right, well, I mean, what I would like really to say is I wish I'd have said all of that, but I can't do that. So I'm not really that erudite or fluent, but I think I joined this I think it was about November, when we first got our apartment here in Briga Towers. and I've been reasonably irregular ever since. Thank you very much, Johnny, for making the sessions very interesting and stimulating. It's wonderful to see a polymath in full flow, and also being able to explain the events in plain language. One of the things that struck me was that our forebears were very earthy and raunchy. I mean, we've seen rape, incest, murder, war, etc., on the way through. I find the way that you communicate all of this really very exciting. Having had my main career in teaching adults, I know how many hours of hard work it takes to make a session look so professional and spontaneous. And I'm sure that you put in a lot of time on this and all of the other events that you run as well. So to Johnny, many thanks indeed. I understand that you're off to Fair Albion. Is it tomorrow, I think? So Nasir Tova, and I hope all will be well in the UK with you. Next, my thoughts on what I've gained. For me, it's very general. It's an opportunity to get back to formal learning of certainly very interesting subject matter. It's been some time since summer programs at yeshivot in Jerusalem, Chapels and Sameach, and also regular Chevruta in Project Seed in the UK. But now I've reached middle age, it's a pleasure to learn regularly again, even if it's once or twice a week. As far as you did ask whether I would like to see any changes in the format. Personally, I find it quite difficult to keep my focus for an hour plus if Johnny's flow is interrupted a lot with questions and comments. I know you like to make it interactive, but it would be nice if we could get straight into it, and if there is participation, keep it brief and relevant. And you know, sometimes there have been occasions where people have taken over and even wandered off the subject, sometimes even before the subject has started. So if we can keep it brief and relevant, and if possible at the end of the session, unless it's invited by Johnny. I'm sorry to be a little bit on a sour note there, but my wife says that I'm ADD, and therefore I can't concentrate for more than about 15 minutes at a time. And it's just a little bit frustrating for me. But overall, I've really enjoyed what we've been doing, and I'm looking forward to the next section of it. Thank you very much, Johnny.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you for the feedback. That's a feature that a few people have said, that the interaction should be curtailed a bit. I suppose that's really my fault. I'm not very good at sort of reining people in. So maybe those who are contributing in the future will just help me out by being as brief as possible. I don't think I've ever finished a shiur on time. Even when we were sat around the table in shul, we always went over. I'm sorry about that. I just can't stop talking. When I find something that I'm interested in, I just go on forever. So the beauty of Zoom, of course, is you can always slink off and nobody actually knows. When we were sat around the table in shul, people might have been a bit embarrassed to get up and leave. But, you know, that's one of the advantages of Zoom. You can turn your camera off. You can go away, and then you can. Nobody even knows that you've gone. I'll just tell you a very quick little story about that. One of my friends here in the community, Eitan Elias, is a teacher, apart from other things, and he told me that there was one of his kids in Zoom had renamed himself to Reconnecting ... And so that was what came up on the screen. Instead of his name, came Reconnecting ... So he put his camera on, put himself on mute, took his camera off, put reconnecting ... and went off to the seaside and had a wonderful time. Only he got caught because somebody spotted him out when he should have been reconnecting. So you can always put reconnecting ... and disappear if it goes on for too long.
I just had two things, Johnny. The other one that I saw from somebody, on Zoom was virus detected, which was a very good thing. And also, I noticed a lot of coffee cups on Zoom in people's hands. I mean, that is just so sissy.
Oh, glad we're coming to that, Stephen, very shortly.
Yeah.
Right. In fact, let's come to it straight away. Let's come to that next. Thank you for those comments, everybody. Thank you for the kind words, which always nice to hear that people are enjoying what we're doing. But I want to go now and talk about the Hadran, because we're going to do a Hadran. Nechama, you're waving at me. Come on then, Nechama.
Yeah, I just want to say that one of my biggest pleasures with learning with you and with the Zoom, that you can interact with the material. Otherwise, just to hear the person talk, I can take a book and I can read it. But the interaction is the thing that is attracting, at least me, It's not the first time in my life that I'm learning this, because I was born here and I got my education here. But it is so nice, the interaction. I wanted you to know that part of the people like it.
Yeah, no, I think everybody likes it.
Yeah.
I think everybody likes it. I think the problem is that sometimes the interaction can be too much, and that's my fault because I don't control it. But no, don't stop. Please do not stop interacting. For me, the interaction is very important. And I don't think Stephen meant to say no interaction. Am I right, Stephen? No. I think what Stephen is saying, to be fair,
it's just the level of interaction.
Yeah.
Interaction is very important, obviously.
Yeah. I think, to be fair, Stephen is not the only one that has said those things to me. It's quite a few people have said that to me, and it's my responsibility, running the show, as it were, to try and rein people in, and I will try and keep our people focused a bit more as we go along. But please do not stop interacting. It's the interaction is what makes this important. I think Nechama's point is absolutely spot on, because most of what we're doing here you can find in a book or online. What we can't find online is everybody else's thoughts. So I think that's oh, by the way, I think I mentioned this to David Marks. I might have mentioned it to two of the other people as well. I intend, please God, when I retire, that I am going to write a book, and it is going to be called Chidushei Poleg, right? Novelle of Poleg. Okay, it's going to be all the chidushim that have come out of all the shiurim that we've done together, all the ideas that we have together brought forward that you won't find in Rashi or Rambam or Ramban or any of the others. All the things that we, the Poleg groups, our shiurim have come up with. I've jotted all these ideas down. And eventually, please God, I'm going to put it into a book and share it with the world. So do keep on interacting, because it's not going to be lost. It's going to be there for posterity if I ever get round to doing it. Right, let's do the Hadran. I am going to show you on the screen what the Hadran is, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about it. Let me share the screen. Okay, there we go. On the screen, you should see some writing, which is the Hadran. Now, the word Hadran comes from, there's two potential roots of this word Hadran. One is Hadar, which means glory. Hod v'Hadar, we say that in davening. And the other is is the word, Aramaic word for return. The equivalent Hebrew word would be chazar. Hey and chet are a bit interchangeable. Daled and zayin are a bit interchangeable, Aramaic and Hebrew. And it's that second expression, chazar or hadar, meaning return, which gives the Hadran its name. The Hadran is a special formula, special things that are said when you make a Siyum. Generally speaking, as I said before, it's made at the end of a Masechet of Talmud. We will do one at the end of Sanhedrin in around about 2050. And then we will do one. I worked this out, by the way. At our current rate of Gemara learning, we will do Siyum Hashas in the year 2372. So that's something to look forward to, isn't it? But in the meantime, we're going to do a Hadran on Sefer Shoftim. Now, the idea is that you are celebrating finishing a significant chunk of learning, and you're saying goodbye to this Sefer. In some ways, I don't know if you feel the same way. In some ways, I feel a little bit sad saying goodbye to Sefer Shoftim. It's become part of my life because most of every Shabbat afternoon for a couple of hours I've spent reading Sefer Shoftim, preparing for the shiur, and then Sunday morning with the shiur and with all of you guys. Sefer Shoftim has become a bit of a part of my life for the last 12 months. And hopefully it's become part of your lives as well. And so in some ways, it's a bit sad to be saying goodbye. So when you say goodbye to somebody, we don't say goodbye, we say au revoir. We say lehitraot, which means we will see you again. And that's what the Hadran is saying. The Hadran is saying, we'll be back to you. We won't forget you. We won't forget what we've learned, and we'll come back to you. We'll come back to the messages that you've taught us, all the things that our contributors have said this morning, all those lessons that we've learned, we'll come back to you. We won't forget them. And it also tells us that we're going to move on to the next part of our learning. So the idea is that you finish the Sefer, and then one of the people is honored to finish it off and to say the Hadran. So I'm going to give the honor of finishing Sefer Shoftim to Leon, because without Leon, we wouldn't have many of these shiurim, because many of them were his idea, and of course his dulcet tones add to everything that we do. So Leon, I would like you to read the last verse of Shoftim for us to finish off Sefer Shoftim, and then together you and I will do the Hadran.
In those days, there was no king in Israel. A man would do whatever seemed proper in his eyes.
Okay, there we have. And what are you pointing out to me there, Leon?
The wording at the end of one of the chapters of Sanhedrin.
And what does it say?
It says, Hadran alaf dine mamonos bishlosha. We shall return to you, dine mamonos bishlosha.
Right, so that's what we're about to say now. So first of all, we have to drink a l'chaim because we have a mazel tov. We have finished the whole sefer. So I have it's far too early for me to be drinking whiskey, so I've got a coffee here, which has been a permanent feature of our shiur, is my cup of coffee. So chazak, chazak, v'nit chazek. Mazal tov to everybody, and thank you for all your contributions. L'chaim, Baruch atah Adonai, shakol niyeh bidvaro.
L'chaim.
Oh, he's drinking wine.
Right, let's do the Hadran. Let me do the Hadran, and then you'll see there's some very strange things in this Hadran, and I'm going to explain them to you. So, Leon, you got the thing I sent to you this morning?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to do the Hebrew, and you can then read the English in each box. Hadran alach. Now here you would put, says Masechet. Well, we're not going to say Masechet, so I'm going to say Hadran alach Sefer Shoftim v'Hadran alan. Da'atan alach Sefer Shoftim v'Da'atan alan. Lo nitneshei minach Sefer Shoftim v'lo titneshei minan. Lo ba'alma hadain v'lo ba'alma da'atei. That means, Leon?
We will return to you the book of Judges, and you will return to us. Our mind is on you, the book of Judges, and your mind is on us. We will not forget you, the book of Judges, and you will not forget us, not in this world and not in the next world.
And of course, what that means is not in this world, is we will take the messages that we've learned from Sefer Shoftim with us into our lives. And not in the next world means that, well, you know, we've chalked up a few good brownie points over the last year, which will hopefully project us and propel us up the ladder when the time comes after 120 into the next world. We'll take that with us. And that's the concept of the Hadran. Now, there's a little prayer that goes on after the Hadran, and it goes like this. Yehi ratzon milefanech Adonai Eloheinu v'lei avotenu shetehei toratcha umanotenu ba'olam hazeh utehei imanu le'olam haba. Chanina bar Papa, Rami bar Papa, Nachman bar Papa, Achai bar Papa, Abba bar Papa, Rafram bar Papa, Rachish bar Papa, Surchav bar Papa, Ada bar Papa, Daru bar Papa. Now, what on earth is all that about? First of all, Leon, translate the first, but you don't need to tell us the bar Papas.
May it be your will, our God, and the God of our fathers, that we should be loyal to your Torah in this world, and it should be with us in the next world.
And then we have the 10 sons of Papa, of Rab Papa, and their names, Chanina, Rami, Nachman, Achai, all these people. What on earth have they got to do with anything? And well, I have to tell you, I have done quite a number of Hadrans, or Hadranim, I suppose is probably the correct word, over my time learning. And I have never, until last night, bothered to look why we say all the names of Bar Papa. And I'm pretty ashamed of myself, to be honest, that I've never looked at that before, having done quite a lot of Hadrans. I've just accepted it that we just say all these names of the children of Bar Papa, of Papa. Why on earth would we do such a thing? Well, when I looked into it last night after Shabbat, I was really quite surprised at why we do it. There's a whole load of different reasons, and I'm going to share a few of them with you. First of all, who was Bar Papa? Who was Papa? He was one of the Amoraim. He was one of the rabbis of the Gemara. And this is something which I want to just stress. He was a very wealthy man. Now, I don't really want to stress that he was wealthy, but I want to stress that he was wealthy because he had a job. He had a business and he worked. He wasn't just Rabbi Papa who sat in his ivory tower learning and writing the Gemara. He was a merchant and he was a very wealthy man. And this is another example of what we see when we learn the Gemara, particularly, is that the people, our great people, were multi-talented. They weren't people who relied just on one aspect of their lives. They weren't just learning all day long. They were actually businessmen as well. Some of them were doctors. Rambam, of course, was a doctor. Some were merchants like Papa, all sorts of others. Rebbe Yossi, our sandler, he was a shoemaker, and there were all sorts of things. So Papa was a very wealthy guy. And in the Gemara, when he finished a section of learning, he would make a party. he would make a Siyum. This was where it came from. And he would invite his 10 sons and all their families, and they would have a big party, and they would invite all sorts of other people to come and to have to join in the party that they would have when they finished learning. So in honor of Rav Papa, who marked the end of a section of learning with a big party for everybody, and shared his joy about learning and about finishing a piece of learning with everybody around him, and shared his largesse with them as well. In his honor, he is mentioned whenever we make a Siyum, because the whole concept came from him. Now, what about these 10 sons? There are 10 places in the Gemara, apparently, where Rav Papa brings together two differing opinions and settles an argument between two people and brings them together. And it's said that as a reward for bringing peace amongst the rabbis, he was rewarded with 10 sons, and therefore we mention these 10 sons as a praise for Rav Papa's ability to bring people together. Now, there is another explanation for why we mention the Bar Papas. I don't really know why, but apparently it is a segula. It is a, how do you translate a segula? An omen, if you like, a good sign that if you say the Bar Papas, you won't forget your learning. I don't buy it myself because I've said this Hadran on a number of occasions over the years, and I can't remember a solitary thing that I learned back then. So it doesn't work. Well, it didn't work for me anyway. But that's one idea, is that it's a segula for remembering your Torah. So the idea of mentioning these Bar Papas. Now, the Bar Papas, where did I find it? I found something. Where has it gone? Here we go. Here are this is the tomb of the B'nai Rav Papa. All those 10 Bar Papas that we've just mentioned are buried in this place in a cave on Mount Ovnit. Okay, now Mount Ovnit, you can see over here, it's all sealed up. This is the cave where they're buried, but it's all sealed up. And the reason that it's sealed up is because, hang on, sorry about that. The reason that it's sealed up is because on top of it is an army base. The IDF have an army base right in this area, and this has been sealed off. But it is still, there is still a shvil, there is a path that you can go to visit the Bar Papas. Okay, so that's the next bit of the Hadran. We say this prayer: may it be your will that we're loyal to your Torah in this world, and that it will be with us in the next world. Pretty much what we just said before. And then we have the next bit, which is a quotation from various different psukim. Some of them you will recognize from davening. I'm not going to say it out in Hebrew because I'm conscious of the time. Leon, next bit, please. Please make it sweet.
Please make it sweet, God, our God, the words of your Torah, in our mouths and in the mouths of your nation, the house of Israel. And it should be that we, all of us, our children and the children of your nation, the house of Israel, that we should all know your name and learn your Torah.
Sorry, carry on, Leon. That was just my phone bleeping.
Your commandment makes me wiser than my enemies, for it is ever with me. Let my heart be complete in your statutes, in order that I may not be put to shame. I will never forget your precepts, for with them you have quickened me. Blessed are you, O God. Teach me your statutes.
Okay, so that's a beautiful prayer. A beautiful prayer to ask God to make the Torah sweet in our mouths. And this is something we say actually every morning before before we start davening, "V'harav na Hashem Elokeinu divrei Torah bifinu b'fiot b'amcha beit Yisrael, v'niyeh anachnu kulanu tzetzei amcha beit Yisrael, kulanu yodishmech v'lom de Toratecha." That first pasuk there is something we say right at the beginning of the day. It's almost the very first thing we say after Modeh Ani, after we thank God for bringing us back to life. We pray that the Torah should be sweet in our mouths, and it's a very important prayer, that, because I can't tell you how many, sadly, how many people, how many children have not found the Torah sweet in their mouths because it's not been taught to them correctly, and sadly have left it. So that's a beautiful prayer. And then comes the last thing that I want to show you in the Hadran is this part here, because this always used to make me partially smile and partially cringe, and I'll be interested to know what you think of this. This is another part of the Hadran. Off you go, Leon.
We give thanks.
Yeah.
We give thanks before you. Yes, there.
Yeah.
We give thanks before you, Lord, our God and God of our fathers, for you gave us a share among those who sit in the study hall, and not among those who sit on street corners. For we arise early, and they arise early. We arise for words of Torah, and they arise for words of emptiness. We work and they work. We work and receive a reward, and they work and do not receive a reward. We run and they run. We run towards eternal life, and they run to a pit of desolation. As it says in Psalms, "And you, O Lord, bring them down into a pit of desolation. People of blood and deceit will not live out half of their days, and I will trust in you."
Okay, so no, Helen's shaking her head there. Come on, Helen, tell me what you think of that. That's what we say in the Hadran. Come on, let's see. I saw you shaking your head there. Come on, tell us what you think.
It's so biased. It's like being elitist.
It's exactly that, isn't it? It's I really don't like that. To me, there's an arrogance in that paragraph. Thank you for making our portion in the Beit HaMedrash and not on street corners. And street corners means, those people who are wasting their lives away. I don't know, maybe it's because of the world that I was brought up in, whereby there was a very clear distinction between the B'nai Yeshiva and those who didn't go to Yeshiva. That this paragraph, it rankled with me. I didn't like it. Having read it again now, personally, I still don't like it. Would anybody like to disagree with me? Philip?
No, I agree with you. I think it's very Haredi, very, very Haredi.
Okay, we don't want to get into Haredi bashing, but yeah.
Well, I bash them. They deserve to be bashed.
I'm more interested in somebody disagreeing with me. Howard?
Well, I disagree with you. I disagree with you, Johnny.
Okay, go on, Nachum. I thought you might. Go on.
Well, I mean, I've lived outside of Israel in cities, and that's exactly what you see. You see these people sitting on street corners doing nothing except buying drugs, smoking, fighting with each other, and that's what I see in this statement. It's not Jews sitting in a study hall. That's part of it. But the main issue is among those who sit on street corners, and they do sit on the street corner and they do not accomplish anything but trouble. That's the criminals, that's the bad people in society who sit on the street corners and don't have a job. They don't do anything. And whether they're going to the study hall, that's not any consequence to me. I'm looking at what are they doing on a street corner every day, and they do it consistently and they are a problem in a decent society.
Okay, thank you.
Can I make a point? Can I make a point?
1 second, Faye. One second. I'll come to you in a sec. Nahum, I'm really glad that you brought that up, because I said to you at the beginning, some of it makes me, I'm smiling because thank God I'm not in that group of people. And the other bit made me cringe because I think it's elitist. But when you point out like that so eloquently, Nahum, there are people that sit on street corners and waste their lives away. But what bothers me is that what we ought to be doing is trying to help those people on street corners, not decrying them and not saying that they're wasting their lives away, which they are. But shouldn't we be trying to help those people on street corners rather than criticizing?
Well, expand them from street corners. Expand them to sitting in a chair and watching television all day. Expand them to other aspects. I mean, we're looking at a computer screen now, but there's something valuable coming back to us. How much is valuable sitting in a chair and watching the junk that's on TV? Nothing. I mean, this is what they're telling us. You're focusing too much on the yeshiva and the study hall. Look at the general society. When do they wake up? What kind of work are they doing? If they work? You know, we are.
What's interesting, I think, thank you, Nachum. I take the point is a very well made point, and I certainly take it on board. 1 second, Philip, I can see you're itching. I'm coming to Faye first, and then Philip, and then Howard, and then we're going to move on because I have to rein you all in. So, but I just want to say one thing about this little paragraph here. How much can we say here? Ein chadash tachat hashemesh. There is nothing new under the sun. This was written thousands of years ago, over 1,000 years ago, 1,500 years ago, probably. And there were people on street corners wasting their lives even then. And sadly, that is the case now. I just feel a little bit uncomfortable being so sort of, I don't know what the word I'm thinking of is, but sort of arrogant, I suppose, is the word that comes to mind. But anyway, that's how I feel. Faye, you wanted to say something.
I just want to make a point. It's not just chutz la'aretz. There's plenty of that here. And go into some of the less intellectual, more seedy areas, and you'll find it here also. So that's okay. But yes, I don't like that. I don't like it though either, because it is elitist, and it is there is something really I'm better than you. But
okay, yes. Philip.
I'd like to say to Nahum that there are some people who don't have the advantages that we had when we were young, and that we were able to study and make something of our lives. Even today, in the developed world, there are still people who are left at the post, and they cannot get away from those street corners. I wish they could, but they can't.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point, Philip, and I think that's what I and I think Helen as well was coming to, and that is that, there are, and we need to try and address that to the best of our ability. I've just been reading, and I'd recommend it to everybody. I have just been finished reading a book by Melanie Phillips called Guardian Angels, and the strapline is "My Journey from Leftism to Sanity." Now, it's not. I don't tell you to read it from the point of view of politics, but what she puts in there, what she describes, is her view of how society has developed over the 30 years that she's been in journalism. And it's an absolutely brilliant book, because she puts into focus exactly what Philip has just said, how and she gives various her reasons and her ideas as to why it's happened. But the fact is that there are people who, as Philip say, are left at the post, and we should not be exultant. That's the word I was looking for before. We should not be exultant about the fact that we are educated and we are running off to the study halls. No, what we should be doing is trying to give people who don't have a chance a bit more of a chance. That's my view. Howard, last one. You're muted, Howard. Howard, we can't hear you. Howard, we can't hear you. Howard, you're muted.
Gosh, I'll never be able to repeat all that. I don't see it as exultant or elitist or triumphalist. I see it as pointing out that the other side of the coin, where people should not be there. They should. I didn't even know they had street corners 1,000 years ago. But, you know, unless we address them, they won't realize that there's something better for them to choose. Johnny, I went to Stan Grammar. Why do I mention that? Because there were two groups there. There were lower middle class Jewish kids and non-Jewish kids from a mill town called Radcliffe. And the Jewish kids all went to university, and very few of the non-Jewish kids did. Why? Because it isn't in their culture. They're not people of the book. They're not argumentative. They go and sit on street corners, a lot of them. I'm not sure that all of them did, but a lot of them do. Too many do. Unless we address the people on the street corners, they won't know that there's a better way to lead your life, a more fulfilling way, and a more academic and achieving way of living one's life.
I think that's a very fair point, Howard. But just as a by the way, I was born in Radcliffe, that mill town. Yeah, I was born there. But I think that's a fair point, actually, and what it demonstrates to us, actually, what Howard is saying is quite interesting, because what Howard's saying is that in his school, there were two groups of people. It was a grammar school, so you had to pass your 11 plus to get there. So you had all the kids in that school were of a certain academic standard. And Howard's feeling, and I think he's probably right, is that overall the Jewish kids will have probably succeeded more, however you describe success, than the other kids. And that's possibly because the Jewish philosophy has always been one of, as Tony Blair once said, education, education, education. That has always been something of very great importance to the Jewish world and the Jewish people. So that's an interesting thing. Anyway, let's stop that there. What I just wanted to point out to you is this. Number one is I suspect that most of you have never done a Hadran before. I have, but I've never actually stopped and looked at it. So for all of us, I think just the mere fact that we've looked at what a Hadran is and we've understood something about the idea of thinking about our learning at the end of a section and thinking about our lives compared to other people's lives, I think that in itself is of great value. The last thing you do in a Hadran is to say a very special Kaddish, which I'm not going to say, but those of you that want to look at it, you can see it. I'll send out a link to the full Hadran, and you can have a look at it. And then what we do is we go straight on to start the next book. So it's very much like in Simchat Torah, when we finish V'zot HaBracha at the end of Dvarim, the first thing we do, after we've said Chazak, Chazak, V'nit Chazek, the very next thing we do is we start Sefer Bereshit. We start all over again. So we're not going to start Sefer Shoftim all over again, but what we are going to do is we're going to move on to the next book straight away. That's how we demonstrate to ourselves and, as it were, to Hashem, although he already knows it, that we are keen to learn more. This is not the end. Hadran doesn't say the end. It's not like, the end of a Hollywood film and it says the end and we all live happily ever after. Look at what the word Hadran means. We will return to you. We'll go over it again. We never finish learning. Never. You live 120 years, you'll never finish learning. So the idea is that we move straight on, and I am going to put on the screen there the next book that we're going to learn, which is Shmuel Aleph, the first book of Samuel. And I'm going to ask Leon to read the verse, only the very first pasuk, so that we have then started the book, and then we will carry on in future weeks to learn the book of Samuel together. Off you go, Leon.
There was a certain man from Ramatayim Tsophim, from Mount Ephraim, whose name was Elkanah, son of Jeroham, son of Elihu, son of Tohu, son of Zuph, from the land of Ephraim.
Okay, and that is all you're going to get right now. I've taken it off the screen so you can't cheat and look on ahead and see what's going to happen in the story. Although when you start the first chapter of the first book of Shmuel, you will all recognize the first story. But as Helen said, we are going to look at it with fresh eyes. So no cheating. Okay, so that is our Siyum on Sefer Shoftim. Hopefully, sometime in 2021, we will have another Siyum on Sefer Shmuel Aleph. We're going to start that not next week, because next week I will be traveling to England. I'm going on next Sunday to England, please God. So I won't be able to do a shiur because I will be flying. However, next Sunday, I have arranged for your delectation a guest lecturer at the same time from all the way down under. My son Dan will be giving a shiur, and it is called Nature or Nurture, the story of Yaakov and Esav. And he's given me an outline of it, and it sounds really quite fascinating. The theory is, I don't think I'll spoil it by telling you the theory. The theory is that Yaakov and Esav were actually identical twins. And he will go through that next week. So I will send out a flyer, which Avril will very kindly make for me. I'll send that out so you've got all the details. It won't be the usual Zoom link, because I won't be able to open it because I shall be flying. So there'll be a different Zoom link. Dan will give me a link, and I'll put that link on the flyer, and I'll also send the link out on WhatsApp and on email so that everybody can get into that. And that will be next Sunday at the usual time of 10 o'clock. And then please God, the following Sunday, all the way from sunny Manchester, we will begin Sefer Shmuel Aleph together. So that's all from me. Those of you that want to go, Tata and Shavua Tov. Those of you that want to stay and carry on, then the floor is yours.
How long will you be gone for?
I will be gone for probably 3, possibly 4 weeks.
Wow, that's a long time. What are we going to do without you?
Well, I think you'll
Have
manage.
fun.
Yeah, I think you'll probably manage. I shall be appointing a deputy. Would you like the job?
Deputy sheriff, yeah.
Would you like to step in my shoes for a few weeks, Philip?
No. Your shoes are, how should I say, unsteppable in. Nobody can take your place.
No.
Great. Thank you, Johnny, and thank you for putting me in an honoured position today.
You deserve it, Leon, because without you, we wouldn't have our shiur, because you have pushed me all the way along with these things, and I'm grateful to you for that. And it's been a pleasure hearing all your beautiful voice too.
I just sent you a message, Johnny. I just sent you a message. Read it.
I like Paul Westbrook's comment there. Paul Westbrook says, "By Yom Mahim, in those days, everyone interacted for as long as was good in their eyes." That's brilliant. I love it.
Okay, Johnny,
maybe we should do a parody of. Maybe we should do a parody of Sefer Shoftim. You've just got me on a good idea there, Paul. I'll have to give this some more thought.
A costume.
Have a good trip.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, Johnny
Shabbat
kids.
tov.
Bye.
Shabbat tov.
Thank you very much, Johnny.
Avril, I'll give you a call shortly if you're free. Okay, great.
Have a safe trip.
Thank you.
And be careful. Don't.
My
Keep
book
your
will
mask
probably be ready when you're back. I've got a copy reserved for you.
Oh, great. I hope you're going to sign it with me.
Of course I will. What a question.
It might be worth something. Maybe 50 agorot or something like that.
Bye, Johnny.
Bye. Shabbat tov, everyone.
Shabbat tov.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Bye. Let's see. What happened to Johnny Halpern? Don't see Johnny Halpern. Jeffrey.
He's in hospital, Nachum. He's in hospital. He's had a big operation.
Wow. Which hospital?
Tel Shomer, I think.
Tel Shomer. Oh,
yeah.
my.
What is it? His heart?
What's his Hebrew name?
He's progressing very well, apparently.
Wow. Oh.
He had the operation already?
Yeah, he had the operation on Monday, and he was progressing well. When I spoke to Linda earlier in the week, she told me that he was doing amazingly well, thank God. And they were even talking about letting him come home shortly. So all good news, Baruch Hashem.
Yeah.
Good.
It's
Thank you.
with the heart?
Well, what's his Hebrew name?
His Hebrew name is Yosef Yonatan.
Yosef
Yonatan Ben Rivka.
Ben Rivka. Yosef.
I'll send it to you on a WhatsApp.
Okay. I got it. Yeah, it's easy. Yonatan.
Yosef Yonatan Ben
Oh,
Rivka.
Yosef Yonatan Ben Rivka.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we have to pray for him. Keep
Yeah.
him well. Oh, all right. Well, you take care of yourself, Johnny.
Okay.
Make sure you're wearing a mask. Take care.
Yeah.
There's troubles there. So you keep
You're
well.
right.
Keep
Don't you
well.
worry. I'm not seeing anybody. I'm staying put.
Good. And wash your hands.
Yeah.
All right.
Shabbat tov.